Hey, it's the wait a minute. Who's Jeep? Last time I Jeep. Today we have a 1995 Cherokee Sport. Ooh. So there's a few things. Someone dropped this off so I could do some work on it. Part numero uno is that we had a major brake leak. Brake fluid leak. The thing was basically dry, and they mentioned something about the back brakes leaking. So, step one to working on someone else's vehicle: verify the complaint. So we put some brake fluid in there, and you step on the pedal. I gave it a couple pushes, and well, what do you know? Lots of hissing and squirting and pissing everywhere. And the drippy drippy. So, that is a good sign. That means we can find our problem. So, you come down here, everything's freaking wet. So how do you figure out what the hell the problem is? Well, this is usually where you need a buddy. Since you can hear it, you know it's spraying somewhere. Now, for the smarty pants's in the group that somehow know what I didn't know until I saw the video, the fluid's pretty much everywhere, and it's on the bottom of the floor. You know, it's on the undercarriage, so it would have to be spraying upwards. So looking back at the video, you can see there's a wonderful pinhole that just sprays it all up in the air. I was really hoping it was going to be a wheel cylinder because that would be easy, but you know, nothing's ever easy on a Jeep. So we are going to have to replace this whole rear line from that adapter over there. Follow it along the frame rail. Ooh. And then up to there, up to the master cylinder. So that's going to be a fun job. So we will have to follow our line and figure out which one we get over on this distribution block. But, you know, you just remove the line, replace it, call it a day. Alright, so we're going to find our closest nut to break this free. You're going to want to get yourself a flare nut wrench, such as this guy. Thank you. So this is a 3/8 size up here. So you're going to want to try to break that free. It might be a little rough. I have some liquid wrench. You can also use PB Blast or whatever you got laying around. It's just what I had. So you put it on there, make sure it's on there snug. And eventually you should be able to break it free. If not, there are other solutions. If you round off the nut, well, get out your vice grips and have a blast. Or, since we know we're going to get rid of the line anyway, what you can do is clip the line and then put a socket on it. So that way you have full 360 degree coverage. And then if you have the room, try an impact gun. Or if you don't have the room, then just try a socket wrench or something. Now, after you do finally break it free, it is acceptable to just use a regular wrench, just to twist it off the rest of the way. The only point of the flare nut wrench is to make sure that you have as much grip as possible while breaking it free so you don't round it off. But after that, you can use whatever works to get the damn thing off. Okay, so next up is to try and figure out which one of these lines over here matches the one down there. So if we look down here, you notice our line started at the top. So see that one that bends out? If we follow that guy, and this has got a right angle, and it goes underneath the steering, the column shaft thingy, and then after that comes out over here, and then to this weird fitting which I've never seen before. It's like a coupling of some sort, but then after that it just goes to the bottom front of our dude over here. Here's a fun Chrysler fact. So that bottom nut is a 12 millimeter. The top one is a 13 millimeter. If you come over here, that one down there is a 1/2 inch. So that is a metric coupling for some reason in between these two lines. God, I love this shit. Believe it or not, sometimes all it really takes is one hand. So, I don't know if I can get you in there, but I've got these two wrenches and I'm holding them with one hand. And by squeezing together, it's loosening. You have to get them just right, but as you squeeze, you're actually breaking it free. So it's a good technique to use in tight spots where you're trying to break something free. Okay, well there you have it. Brake line is finally out. So, of course, the one that had to fail was literally like one of the longest ones in this goddamn Jeep. You can see the difference is quite clear when I hold them together. The one on the right is your regular double-ended American flare, and the one on the left is your metric bubble flare crap. I don't have a bubble flare, so let's see what happens when we take that other piece off. Okay, so I got this side off. This is a 1/2 inch, and you can see it's a regular flare. But on this side, it's also a regular flare. So maybe that thing over there is the inverted flare, in case you do have to do something like that. So I guess that's a special opposite end flare thing, so that they, weird. Yeah, well, there's no reason to try to reuse that just to save ourselves one little tiny bend. We're going to redo this whole brake line ourselves, so we're just going to need ourselves a 1/2 inch nut and a 3/8 nut. And actually, this one's in such good condition, we could probably just reuse it, because I think it's meant for a 3/8 brake line. Interesting. Alright, so we're just going to run what we brung, and we got some scraps in the back that we can use to get this job done. So we got some regular, I believe this is steel brake line. Now they do make some fancy copper stuff, which is supposed to be real easy to bend. I did really want to try that out, but there's none here. And this looks like it should be enough for what we need, so I'm not going to bother going out to get some. Might pick some up later though. And for our nuts, I've got some steel nuts right here. Nuts of steel. So this is a 3/8 24 thread. This is an inverted thread, which I guess is the regular. And it's for 3/16 inch tubing, which is good because that is the standard size, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to cut this tube and keep that adapter safe for this end. I'm going to unravel this and make sure that we have enough for the vehicle. I'm pretty sure we should. And yeah, then we'll get to bending. Alright, so this regular steel stuff isn't actually all that bad. So since we got the whole thing out in one piece, what you can do is lay this side by side and bend it around so that it matches. Now it's a pain in the ass because you know, it is kind of close, but just little tweaks here and there will throw it off. But you can, you know, copy it to the most part. So we're up to here now, and this is the part where it goes up to the frame, and it's going to get tricky here because of all the stuff that goes around. Alright, so we did get that looking pretty nice, but I'm not going to be able to get that roll through there easily. I'd have to unbend the whole thing and it'd be a big old mess. So, kind of a rule of thumb, you should always try to go for the hardest fastener or hardest part first. So we're going to do this end, especially since it's so bendy. So our plan of attack is going to be go straight down, and then maybe make a bend here, and then go back, and then that way, and then down. So the fewer bends, the easier. And we just want it to kind of follow in sort of the same way that the factory one did. So I'm going to bend this one around, see if we can't get it to line up nicely, and then we'll work on the back. Okay, so now for the fun part, doing the flare. So this is a regular double flaring set for those wonderful 45-degree tubes. Okay, so basically you have the thingy that the tube goes in, you have the squishy bit, and then you have the piece that actually does the bendy work. So you find whichever one fits in, which I think is maybe this one, and then you check the instructions, because whoever remembers how to do this stuff, right? So first you get the tube lined up with your adapter, and then you pop it in, you squish it down one way, and then you use the thinger to squish it down the other way. So it's really simple. So I like putting this in a vise just to hold everything in place. So I'm going to use this one since it's got the little finger fingers. It's a lot easier to do than using the nut version. Okay, so let's get this set up. We're going to want our 3/16 inch size along with our 3/16 inch adapter dealio. So step one, you're going to want to mount this thing so that the tube is the same height as our adapter thing on that shoulder. This is important because if you don't get the height right, your flare is either going to be too big or too small or whatever, so you want to get that right. Alright, so we tighten down this side first, and then we tighten down this one. That way it holds it all into place. So we take our little adapter like so and slide it on in. They recommend in the instructions that you put a little chamfer on the edge of that, so I just took one of these guys, little files, and just filed the outside of it real quick, just to give it a little chamfer. So I'll slide this up on there. And the cool thing with this kit, it's real fancy like, you ready? You like that? And then you just rotate it, and it's in there. It's really, really nice. So we're going to loosen this until it fits, and then we tighten it down. Okay, so it's going to get set up like this. Now it's important that you have this one cranked down pretty good. You want this to really squeeze on your tube while you do this, because otherwise it's just going to push the tube down instead of actually doing it right. Also forgot to mention on this thing there's a little chamfer on this as well. You want that to be up, so make sure that you're not using the flat side, because that's the bottom. So now we just crank this down until that basically contacts the bottom. Okay, so once you crank it down and take your adapter off, that's what it should look like. Maybe clean out any dirt if there's any crap in there. Funny enough, that kind of looks like that one side of the male end of the flare, interestingly. Alright, so now step 2. You do the same thing again, but without the adapter. So you run this guy down, make sure she lines up properly. And then you just tighten that down until it's good. And then you're all done. After you're done cranking it down, taking it back up, you should get something that looks a little bit like that. Beautiful. Okay, and check her out. She's looking pretty. Good to go. You did remember to put the nut on, right? Don't forget that step. Alright, cool. So now that that one's set, we could probably run it the rest of the way. And I don't know if I'm going to have to flare that side on the vehicle or not. We'll have to see. Kind of hope not. Alright, so we got these kind of sort of lined up. And to avoid having to put the other fitting on underneath the Jeep, which is going to be annoying and a much higher risk of making a flare that doesn't work, I'm just going to rough it out, just like so. I'm just going to cut it, put the fitting on, and then we'll do the final pretty bending underneath, just to get it exactly where it needs to go. Alright, pick your spot and cut. If you've not seen these before, they work pretty easily. You tighten it down, and then give it a spin or two, and then tighten it down. And what that does is slowly cut into it until it finally splits it. This is the best way to get a nice clean cut. Ta-da! Beautiful. I'm sure most of you knew that, but pro tip, you notice that opening on the top roller? That's so you can put a flare in there and cut the flare off cleanly, so you only take off a small little chunk. So if you ever mess up, it's a good way to fix the problem. Another one. Don't forget the nut. Alright, so when putting this guy in, you're going to start at the front of the vehicle. You want to slide it over top of the transmission cross member, because that's where it follows on the frame rail. And then after that, you can start wiggling it and jamming it up there. We'll go to the top to finish it off. Alright, so after about 15 minutes of wrestling, you should be able to finally get that nut in there. It's nice to try and thread this in before you start doing all your final bends, so that you have a little wiggle room, because these are a pain to get. Sometimes it helps to get a perspective from here, and then get one from over here, because you might realize this angle looks a lot different than that angle as far as lining up straight. It went in cross-threaded like 2 or 3 times, but you'll know because it gets tight. So obviously back it off and try again. Alright, so now we can tighten that up, and we can finish up the bends. Just make sure that it's not bouncing on the frame, not rubbing against anything, and all safe and sound. And for bonus points, we'll see if we can get it to clip back into the factory little finger dingers. Okay, there we go. That's the other side in. Took a little bit of wrestling, but it's in there. You can bend it around to where you need it so it looks all pretty. Couldn't get that last one in there quite well, but everything else looks very nice. And she runs all the way down there. Oh, sweet. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's out of the way of the fuel lines. It's not rubbing, it's not touching, none of that. So we should be safe and sound, so we don't want any wearing on this prematurely. Don't want to have to do that job twice. So now we're going to put some brake fluid in here and see if it leaks. So we're going to use dot 3 or dot 4. Do not use dot 5 because that is not compatible. We only went 3 or 4. Even says right on here, dot 3. Now 3 and 4 are basically the same thing. 4 just has a slightly higher boiling point, I think. Whatever it is, they're very compatible. So it doesn't matter. You can get 3 and 4. But brake fluid is what's called hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture, so you want to limit the amount of time it has contact with the air because it sucks in the moisture to keep the lines from rusting. But if it sucks too much water in, then you start getting the water boils before the brake fluid does and turns into a gas, and gas compresses and squishy brake lines. You don't want that. So just don't leave the cap open. Don't leave this sitting open while you're doing your job. Always make sure that your things are closed while you're working, and only open it when you're going to fill it. So we'll fill that up to the fill line, and then we'll pump the brake pedal, and we'll see if any of our connections leak. Make sure to push a little booty down. Alright, let's see what happens. I pumped it and I didn't see anything. I don't see anything over here, which is good. And if we come down here to the original problem area. Hello, light. She's looking pretty dry. Cool. Alright. Well, now that we see that our connections are pretty good, now we can move on to the last step, which can be bleeding the brakes. Oh, that's going to be fun. Oh man, I thought there wasn't a lot of room on a lifted vehicle. This is going to be great. Alright, so now that we've made our repair, it's time to bleed the brakes. That's the final part. Whenever you open the system and you introduce air into the lines, it's best to bleed all the lines so that you know there's no air, because air means squishy pedal, and that's no bueno. So here we are in the back of the vehicle, and up there, if you can see it or not, that little nipple looking thing is the bleeder for the rear wheel cylinder. Now, I can already tell you that we're gonna have a bad time because there's no boot on there. So things are probably seized up nice and well. I got a little bit of liquid wrench squirted on there, but I don't think that's going to be enough to save us. So the best way is to get a 6-point socket on there. Make sure that it's, you know, covering all sides, or a wrench or something. But 6-point is better than 12-point, and we're going to see if we can break it free. I get a feeling I'm going to have to break out the torch though. See what happens. Yeah, I'm glad I went with the torch early on. Torch it and spray some stuff on it, and if you're lucky, if you're really lucky, she'll start to come free. Thank God. That's not a job you want to have to do, is replace that wheel cylinder. Especially on these guys. Since this is a C-clip axle, you got to take off the cover, take out the center pin, take out the C-clips, remove the shafts. It's a big old pain in the butt. I mean, if you're lucky, you might be able to wiggle it past, but seriously, if you can get these out in one piece, oh, try your hardest. It's a bitch if they snap. So here is the poor man's one-person brake bleeding system. I just have myself a rubber tube that fits over that thing, just like so. And you run it to a small bottle, and the trick is that this hose is submerged in brake fluid. So what you do is you undo that until fluid comes out, and then you keep pressing the pedal. So you push it to the floor, and then you bring it back up. And then if you can, try and watch the tube. You want to watch the bubbles go down, but you don't want to watch the bubbles go back up. So once you keep pressing it, and the bubbles stop coming, then you know she's all aired out. And a clear tube helps so you can see the fluid color. Once the fluid looks nice and pretty, you're good. Alright, so we've done that. Sorry I didn't show you the other side. You're supposed to start with the farthest one first. So the farthest from the brake cylinder. So that would be our rear passenger tire, then our rear driver tire, then our front passenger tire, then our front driver tire. So by doing that, the entire system is bled, and you know there's no air, and you know the fluid's all clean. So once you did that, you can find the wrench that we lost. Okay, these are 5/16 on this one. They could be a 3/8. So now with the hose still attached, try and tighten this until you know it's good, because you don't want any air to get into the system. So just crank on her, make sure she's tight, and then you'll move on. The thing you want to check on is, while you're doing this, make sure you don't run out of fluid, because if you run out of fluid, you're going to have to do this all over again. That's not something we want. So make sure after every one you top it off, and we're good to go. Did a good job. Your brake pedal should be nice and firm. You should really be able to feel the brakes. If you can push it like halfway to the floor or it's squishy, keep trying. Now she's firm and she's feeling good. Nice. So brakes are firm, and this is full. So for bonus points, we can try and tighten up the emergency brake, or just the rear brakes in general, since we're going to the trouble of actually fixing the brake line. So let me show you what's going on in here. So get yourself your trusty flathead.
Don't call me the fathead.
Okay, so the emergency brakes are actually your regular drum brakes. There's not a separate thing. So your rear drums are also your emergency brake. And especially since this is L Mountain Well, it'd be nice to have an emergency brake that works, see? So usually there's supposed to be a rubber dust cap here. It keeps the crap out, but of course this one's missing that as well. If you come in here, you see that star? That is your star adjuster. Now, on a normal, properly operating vehicle, that should self-adjust. Every time you go in reverse and hit the brakes, it's supposed to flick a little thing and move the star a click, but they never work. So you're going to come in here. So first, let's see how much play we got. She can move a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start spinning this, and then we're going to check play again. If there's more play, then we're going the wrong direction. So you take your screwdriver, and you're either going to flick this star up, or you're going to flick it down. Hopefully it actually turns, if I can get it. But you're just going to keep turning that and slowly spin the wheel. And what you're listening for is for brake drag. So when you can hear the drums actually drag, you know you're there. So we're going to start doing that. If you're done having fun in there, I found out the star has to go down. So when you put the screwdriver into the thing, you want to be able to flick the star down. And that's the same on both sides. It's actually inverted on one side, so it's the both on each. So when you move the star down, it expands it and opens up those pads, getting them closer to the drum. So you should still be able to turn it by hand. You might hear a little bit of scratching, but you should be able to still, easily move this. Well, you did a good job. You come in here, if your brake is still connected, pull that up and see if the wheel still turns. Look at that, huh? So it's actually engaged now, so you're pretty much roll there. So you can play around with it a little bit here and there if you want. You can always make them a little tighter, a little self-aware. But yeah, alright. I think that's a brake line and a mini little brake job there. I checked the pads look fine, so just a little tune-up for the most part, a little bleeding of the fluid and whatnot. You too can work on your own vehicle. Play ball.